Hey guys, Urban Ash here, hope you like the video. Hey guys, Urban Ash here, hope you like the video. Please like and subscribe and check link in description for like to dubby energay and use my code at checkout. Enjoy the video. The men were gods. No other words could describe them. Chakra coated their bodies and caused the cold metal plates of their warring clan-styled armor to jangle lightly. The ground around them had been scorched by black fire and covered with the shattered remains of swords and broken oaths of brotherhood. Craters the size of summoned creatures dotted the ground randomly, and shredded remains of forests littered the earth. Kunao and shuriken made of chakra metal stuck point first into the ground, each damaged from the impact with another weapon just like it, with elemental chakra coursing through it. The shinobi no kami jumped over the swipe of his former friend's kama blade while spinning before launching his left foot at the man with the enlightened eyes. The man's eternal Mangekyo Sharinon tracked the chakra-coated blow before raising his gunbei to block the strike. The shinobi no kami narrowed his eyes before he used the fan to push himself backwards into a backflip, although not before throwing a few shuriken coated in Raiten chakra. With a flick of his gunbei, the man with the enlightened eyes launched a gust of wind chakra that stripped the incoming projectiles of their charges and sent them flying toward the ground. The shinobi no kami landed with his hands clasped into a snake seal before placing one palm on the floor. Instantly spikes of wood shot forward from him toward the man with the enlightened eyes, who simply sliced through them all with a blade coated with the black flames of heaven. This was merely a distraction for the shinobi no kami to launch himself forward with a speed beyond even a swift release user and slam a fist in his former friend's armor-covered torso, forcing him to double over. It was then the brutal taijutsu training of the man took over, and a knee was slammed upward straight into his opponent's chin, launching him upwards with enough force for his feet to leave the floor. The final strike was a spinning side kick planted directly into the man with the enlightened eyes' chest, which not only cracked the crimson armor but sent him flying backwards. With a flick of his wrist, the man with the enlightened eyes flew before grabbing onto the side of the wall, slowing him down to a stop. "Stop stalling, Hashirama," the man with the enlightened eyes said as he stood up, the chain of his gunbei and making a sharp noise every time it struck a rock on the ground. "You can't defeat me, it's inevitable." Hashirama was a tall man with tanned skin and dark eyes. He had waist-length black hair typically styled in a center-parted fringe that framed his face. He was wearing a set of maroon body armor often worn by members of the Senju clan during the Warring Clans period, along with a large scroll going across his back. The thing that made him stand out was the metal plate with a leaf symbol engraved on it, which was attached to a black cloth wrapped around his head. "Nothing is inevitable," Madara Hashirama said with a cross of his arms. "The only thing that we can know for sure will come is death." Madara was a fair-skinned man with spiky, waist-length black hair that had a slight blue tint to it, with a bang that covered one of his eyes. He was wearing a set of crimson armor similar to what the Uchiha clan wore during the Warring Clans period. He had in his hand a scythe that was as tall as him, however with a short blade, while in his other hand Washi's most famous and prized possession, a brown and black gunbei that had been passed down to Madara from his father and to his father from his father. The thing that stood out besides the weapons in his hand was the lack of headband with a metal plate with a leaf symbol. Madara looked Hashirama in the eye. "Yes, and it will be your own." His hands clenched around his weapons. "This curse of hatred has given me strength, and with it, I will crush the cycle of war and pain. You will fall before the might of the Uchiha." Madara Uchiha roared as ungodly amounts of blue chakra ripped from his body and shot upwards like a spear to the heavens. "Kyubi. The flames of the will of fire burn inside of me, and I will defend them with my last breath," Hashirama said to himself as his own hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. "For I am the shadow of those flames. I am the first Hokage of Konohagaku no Sato." Hashirama Senju yelled at the top of his lungs as the ground around his began to rumble and course with energy. "Wood style, wood golem." It was then the earth exploded as wood stronger than the most durable metal in the elemental nations shot up from the ground at the command of its master, shaping itself into a humanoid creature as tall as mountains. It looked like an Oni with its demon-like features and the dragon coiled around its body. It was a fearsome avatar befitting of the man wielding it, the most powerful man in the elemental nations. A being of oppressive chakra entered the arena with a roar, its red eyes with black markings glowing with the hatred its master had for the man before him. The blue chakra that was pouring from Madara like a broken dam began to surround the Baijuyu like an armor. With a clench of his fist, the chakra began to stabilize into a set of samurai armor with an extra set of arms on the Baijuyu's back. Every part of the Susanoo Kyubi was dangerous, the swords in the hands of the arms of the Baijuyu's back, the 9 armored tails flowing behind it, the sharp teeth in its mouth and the oceans of chakra rippling off of it. It was a terrifying sight befitting the man wielding it, the most dangerous man in the elemental nations. Kyubi. Madara roared with a finger pointed at Hashirama. Destroy. It was with that order the Kyubi began to gather positive black chakra and negative chakra into a ball before launching it at the wood golem at an incredible speed. Bijudama. For most shinobi, this would have been certain death, but Hashirama Senju simply leapt toward the deadly projectile with a hand extended. Then things began to get crazy as Hashirama caught the Bijudama in the palm of his hand without stopping before proceeding to slam his body and the unstable-tailed beast ball directly into the wide-eyed Baijuyu snout. There was an incredible explosion as the dense ball of tailed beast chakra destabilized and sent all combatants backwards in opposite directions. Hashirama's wood golem had been damaged and covered in red burn marks but was still okay. The Susanoo armor on the Kyubi had not been as okay, with the orange of the Kyubi's fur showing in some spots. Hashirama noticed this and shot forward on the recovering Baijuyu to finish this once and for all. His wooden fists began to rain down on a particular spot that the shinobi no kami noticed was exposed, and it only took a few blows for the back left arm of the Susanoo to become detached. The Kyubi began to give out a roar of pain only to get struck in the face by a wooden fist coated with chakra. Wood release, adamantine fist. Madara and the Kyubi could only roar as they were both sent flying into one of the craters they had made earlier with a bang. Hashirama's eyes narrowed on his target and ran for the ethereal sword sticking out of the ground. Once he had the Susanoo blade in his hand, Hashirama held it by the middle with the weapon extending itself like a spear. With a mighty throw, the blue blade flew from the wood golem's hands and struck the armor of the Kyubi with enough force to shatter it for good. This is over. Hashirama roared as he leapt off of his position atop his wood golem, red markings covering his face. He shot across the distance between him and the Kyubi in a single, chakra-enhanced bound while Madara was disoriented and managed to weave through the seals his wife had taught him. Hashirama slammed his palm onto the Kyubi's head and black lines instantly spread from him. Contract seal. Madara jumped up with wide eyes as he saw the Sharingan disappear from the Kyubi's eyes as well as his control. No. Hashirama shot forward and slammed his fist into Madara's face before the Uchiha could block, launching him to the ground with enough force to leave a crater. With a final jump, the shinobi no kami landed at the edge of the crater. Madara's armor had been shattered by the back-to-back blows from the wood golem and the Susanoo sword, while his body was littered with small cuts and stab wounds gushing blood. Several of his ribs had been broken and he believed he had a punctured lung. Senjutsu Madara began before coughing, spitting a little bit of blood. I should have known. This is the end, Madara, Hashirama said as he pulled out the blade of his katana. You were a brother to me. As were you to me, Madara said with a smirk. He closed his eyes for the final time. Goodbye. As the blade descended down to pierce through Madara's chest, the old Uchiha began to think about his life. It had been full of war and bloodshed. He had been weak as a child, failing to save so many of his brothers in both blood and arms. The only good he ever did was to not kill that annoying Senju boy he met when he was throwing stones and instead become his friend. He would never admit it, but Hashirama was as much of his brother as Izuna was. He could not have stayed in Konoha. His old ways and ideas would stir up too much anger and hatred. If there was to be peace in Konohagaku no Sato, Madara Uchiha must die. As he waited for his death, he suddenly remembered something. His son, Minato Uchiha. Minato was an accident. He had been born after a drunken night in Tanzaku town, but Madara had immediately taken a liking to the boy due to his immediately obvious prodigious talent. Madara often said that his son was the second coming of his brother, Izuna Uchiha, due to their mannerisms and knack for space-time ninjutsu. Madara sighed in his head. He would have liked to see his boy Minato one last time. No. He was going to see Minato. He would see his blood pass on. This was not going to be his final dance. Transcription seal, Izanagi. Madara yelled in his head as both of his eyes went blind. One usage of Izanagi was going to fake his death. The second was to replace his eyes with Nyoshiri-non after he died and send his current eyes to Konoha. Those eyes were going to be his present to his grandson. Peace to the world was going to be his final legacy. Why do they hate me so much? The boy asked himself as he rubbed the tears from his eyes. He didn't look back when he heard the loud explosion and a flash of bright colors behind him. The sight of the fireworks that illuminated the Konohan night sky would just make tears fall faster. Today was October 10th and it was the 5th annual Kyubi festival. It was also the boy's birthday. Sucky birthday, wasn't it? Streaks of dirt marked the boy's bright golden hair as it hadn't been washed recently, and his dirty orange jumpsuit was ripped slightly on one arm from the time he had tried to jump from the top of a tree and had fallen into a bush. He had just been trying to get their attention. He continued to run away from the village, his speed closer to that of a genin than a 4-year-old. He had always been fast enough to catch all of the other kids during tag and be forced to sit out because it was unfair. It wasn't his fault, alright. He wasn't afraid of getting lost as he knew Jiji usually had a few masked people following him. He could feel them on the roofs usually, and he knew they were the ones who stopped the bad people from getting him. He briefly turned around to see if anyone was around him, but it seemed to be mostly silent. But the boy knew that silence didn't mean it was empty. It came with being in Ashinobi village. His eyes shut as he tried to activate that ability he had realized he had last year during a game of hide and seek. Suddenly the world changed from colors to black and white and city of Konoha ignited with fire. The boy had been afraid the first time he had seen it, but he now knew that each flame was actually the life force of a resident of the village. The boy knew that his Jiji in the Hokage tower had the biggest, but he knew some of the masked people who followed him were really powerful too. The shinobis in the village had more powerful fires than the civilians, but it was all really impressive. The boy could even see different tints and shades of life force, with some being warmer while others were more free like water or hard like earth. The boy searched around for any of the masked people, however found that almost all of the village was in the streets celebrating, not caring about anything. Tears began to stream from the boy's eyes as he realized that not even his protectors cared about him enough to follow him on his birthday. He began to run even faster, fast enough to overtake Sumchinin as he ran behind a tall fence at the edge of the village. He didn't notice the sign that said, Daiyan Juyanen Shujo, also known as, Training Ground 44. The boy didn't know the more common name for the forest he had just entered was, Shi no Mori, or, the Forest of Death. The boy continued to walk through the forest until he stopped at a clearing with a large rock structure on which he sat down. He felt the tears begin to stop, but not before a few fell onto the rock face. With a sad smile, he drew a 5 with the water from his own tears. Happy birthday to me, the boy sang to himself. Happy birthday Naruto, happy birthday to me. It was due to the incredibly sad situation that the boy didn't realize something was watching him and was slowly walking closer and closer to him. The forest was almost silent. There was barely a snap of a twig as it pounced. Something inside of Naruto told him to turn around, and he did just in time to see a 15-foot tiger lunging at him with razor-sharp claws out. It was at least half a ton of pure muscle coiled to attack. Naruto could let out only a scream as he looked certain death in the eye. Where is he? There was a wave of ki that ripped through the room and brought all of the Umbu to their knees, each wanting to reach for their masks from the sheer difficulty that was breathing. Each of the Umbu was strong, easily Jonin rank with years of experience, however the sheer power behind the killing intent showed the danger of the man before them. This was followed by a wave of pure chakra that displaced everything around the elderly man. The man was easily in his early 70s with tan skin that has wrinkles and liver spots. Spiky white hair was hidden under a triangular hat, and a red and white robe covered his short stature. This was all a little misleading as the sheer power and authority oozing off this man proved who he was. He was Hiruzen Sarutobi, Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakuer no Sato and Shinobi no Kami, god of shinobi. He was the child of Suzuki Sarutobi and student of Hashirama Senju and Tobirama Senju. He was the man who had led the Leaf through 3 wars with his ideals of love and camaraderie he had gained from his teachers. He did not leave family behind, and one of his closest family members was Naruto Uzumaki, son of 2 people like children to him and the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko. Thus he was very angry. One brave Umbu member stood forward and knelt before the Hokage. "We do not know, Hokage-sama. That is not the answer I want to hear. Find me Naruto Uzumaki or I will have your masks." The man roared in anger. Dismissed. The elite group did not have to be told twice, and they disappeared in a flurry of leaves, none wishing to anger the god of shinobi. Few were brave or idiotic enough to attempt to challenge the veteran, even in his old age, especially when he was furious. Hiruzen took a deep breath as he sat down in his chair and buried his face in his hands with a sigh. This was not how the day was supposed to end up. Hiruzen had been planning to meet with Naruto in the evening so that he could treat the young boy to ramen. However, when the Hokage went to the academy, he had learned from Miraka that the boy had ran off after class. It was only after Hiruzen's visit to Naruto's apartment that he realized the boy was missing. Hiruzen glanced over to the picture he had on his desk of a small boy with blonde hair standing on top of the Hokage monument, a big smile on his whiskered face and a peace sign. "I'll find him, Kushina," Minato Hiruzen swore solemnly. "I promise." Naruto groaned as he sat up and let out a sigh when he felt sewer water between his fingers. Great, that would never come out of the jumpsuit. It took him a few seconds to question why there was sewer water when he had passed out in a jungle, and another few seconds for him to open his eyes. "How can you be sure, Dash?" It was a big booming voice, like that of a giant. It was also kind of rough, like that of a gangster's, but also had a sense of humor to it. "My dear son, I am positive in his power. His path will like a leaf's in the wind, unpredictable and wild. Just as he is. He could be the savior or destroyer of our world." This voice was far more ancient and powerful, with the sort of wisdom that one would develop over a millennia. Naruto groaned as he sat up and looked around, only to see no one there. It was only once he looked up that he noticed there was another presence in the room with him. What the hell? Trapped behind a set of bars each as thick as him was a fox. A giant orange fox easily as big as the academy building, with 9 long tails swirling behind it. It had crimson eyes and long canine teeth as it stared at the small boy in his cage. "Who might you be, ninja?" it growled. "You first," Naruto said, trying to be tough like Jiji said to be when someone tried to intimidate you. "You always give your name first before you ask." The fox gave a feral grin. "I am the Kyuubi no Yoko, natural disaster, and plague of shinobi." Sounds more like a bunch of stupid titles, but okay, Naruto said with a grin of his own as he held out his hand. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you. You do realize that you're talking to a giant fox, right?" Kyuubi commented. "Good point," Naruto sighed. "So what is this place?" The Kyuubi gestured around with his tails. "This is your mind and this is my cage." Naruto commented with a snicker. "Jiji usually says having voices in your head is bad, but you seem okay." The Konoha's future Hokage crossed his arms and stared at his Baijuya. "So why am I in here, Mr. Yoko?" The Kyuubi rolled his eyes at what it assumed to be the boy's naivete. "My last name isn't Yoko." The Kyuubi was however just walking into the young boy's trap. "Does that mean that Kyuubi isn't your first name? So then what is your name?" For a second the Kyuubi was shocked at the fact that a 1,000-year-old creature had just been played by a 5-year-old boy. The boy however would need to do more than Thato get his name. "You're in danger and have loosened the seal on something locked inside of you that could save your life right now," the Kyuubi said, ignoring the boy's comment. "Swa brought you in here so you wouldn't die and take me with you. How do I unlock them for good?" Naruto asked hopefully. "Unlock my seal and it will be released," the Kyuubi said with a smile. It was at that Naruto paused. He wasn't quite sure what the Kyuubi was, but it wasn't something that he wanted running around Konoha. But there was something about the fox in front of him that felt familiar, as if they had been close in a past life. "I don't know why," Naruto said as he walked up to the large fox's cage. "But I trust you, Mr. Yoko." Naruto stretched onto his tiptoes as he stretched to reach the white seal paper. A second before he grabbed it and ripped it off, a hand grabbed him and pulled him back with incredible speed. "Stop right there," a man said. "This is a big decision." Naruto looked up with wide eyes as he instantly recognized who it was. "Yondaime-sama!" Naruto said with joy. The Kyuubi recognized the man as well. Yondaime. The man was tall and lean, with a slim but compact body mean for someone who hit fast and hard. He was wearing the traditional Konoha Jonin uniform with a white haori on top that had red flames on the bottom and the kanji for 4th Hokage on the back. The most noticeable thing about him was the spiky golden hair and the bright blue eyes he had. "Kyuubi. I must say I did not miss you and I wasn't expected to be summoned so early," the man said. "But I do get to say happy birthday to Naruto." Naruto was shocked his hero knew his name, especially since he had died the day Naruto was born. "How do you know my name?" The Yondaime gave a hearty chuckle that made Naruto smile. "Because I gave it to you, of course." Naruto took a step back as his eyes widened in shock. "Wait. Yes, you are correct," the Yondaime said. "My name is Minato Namikaze, Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato. I'm also the father of Naruto Uzumaki, the greatest gift the world has ever given me." The walls Naruto's mind began to shake a little bit from the shock as a billion emotions ripped through Naruto. One however grabbed hold much tighter than the rest. Naruto ran forward and hugged his father. "I miss you so much." Minato gasped in surprise and was about to respond when he was cut off. "I've been super good." Naruto grinned as he rubbed the tears from his eyes. "I'm starting the academy later this year, but I already started and I can read really well and I've been exercising and sleeping and stretching to get stronger. Jiji says if I want to get even stronger I have to eat less ramen, but that's crazy and I only eat it 7 times a week. Naruto's mini rant was interrupted by his father grabbing him even tighter. Minato smiled as tears threatened to escape him. "I'm so sorry you have to grow up alone." The Kyuubi coughed into its hand to get the two blondes' attention. "I'm sorry to break up the sob show, but the tiger is getting closer." Minato nodded. For once the Kyuubi is right. "Oh, let it go. It was 5 years ago. You killed me and my wife." Minato looked back at his snickering son. "I know you want to open the seal and I will let you, but I need to tell you some history before my time is up." With a snap of his fingers, 2 chairs appeared from the ground while the Kyuubi laid its head on its paws. "It all comes down to 2 men. Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha." Naruto raised an eyebrows when he heard the names of people he had read about in a history book. "Whoa, the founders?" "Yes, good job Naruto-kun," Minato nodded. These were the 2 strongest men of their era. Their power shaped the earth around them with their power. The Senju clan was one of the greatest clans in the Warring Clans era. They were known as the clan with 1,000 hands due to the fact that each member had a special ability, Minato explained. The strong body of the Senju allowed them to adapt and focus to one specific part of the shinobi arts. This focus allowed to achieve feats in this topic that are legendary to this day. Tobirama Senju with his Suten ninjutsu, Toka Senju with her genjutsu and Hashirama Senju with his mokuton, Minato said with a smile. All of these were mastered to a higher degree than almost all others of their time. Minato continued. Then there was the Uchiha clan. The rivals of the Senju as well as the only one who could match their power. When one nation would hire the Senju to fight, the opposing nation would hire the Uchiha. The Uchiha held their own fearsome Kekkei Genkai, the Sharingan. Minato smiled. The ability to cast genjutsu with their eyes, copy their opponent's jutsu and predict their movement was incredibly powerful on the battlefield. The 2 men who controlled these clans were on a whole different league, he explained. Their battle was enough to carve a valley deep into the ground. It was during their final battle that Hashirama Senju defeated Madara Uchiha, and it was thought the Uchiha clan mainline died with him, Minato said as his eyes suddenly glowed with a crimson light. No one knew that Madara had a son named Minato Uchiha. Naruto's own eyes widened at the sight. "Wait, does that mean that I'm Madara's grandson?" "Yes, as well as the last of the main house Uchiha," Minato said as he poked his son in the forehead with 2 fingers. You also have one of the most powerful eyes in the history of our clan. Naruto raised an eyebrow. How can you be so sure? Minato gestured toward the fox that had been listening to their conversation. The Kyuubi is not violent and as destructive as he usually is. The Sharingan is not the only reason for that, the Kyuubi commented, only to smirk at Minato's confused face. Oh, you do not know? Minato's red eyes flashed with anger and power. Tell me Baijuyu or this cage will become much more uncomfortable. The Kyuubi gave a foxy smirk. We both know you do not hold enough power in that state to do as you have threatened. Do you not know your own wife's parents? It asked, slightly amused. Minato's eyes narrowed suspiciously. She never knew. Oninjin, it is obvious, is it not? Jinchuriki are always related to the cage of their village, the Kyuubi said as if it was the most simple thing in the world. Usually it is their own child. The gears in Minato's head began to turn rapidly. It's impossible. Naruto looked at the two with confusion. What's impossible? Your mother was Kushina Uzumaki, daughter of Mito Uzumaki and Hashirama Senju, the Kyuubi smirked. Thus making you the grandson of Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju. Minato, however, had already figured that out and had already leapt a few steps ahead. He has it? The Kyuubi knew exactly what he was talking about. Even stronger than his grandfather, in fact. I don't even know the extent of his power with it will be. What are you talking about? Naruto asked. I never said you had unlocked one thing, the Kyuubi explained. You were born with the most powerful components of both of your grandfathers. Minato was concentrating so hard as he reappeared in front of the cage instantly in a burst of speed. The writing on the paper instantly turned to liquid ink as the yellow flash removed the seal. There was a boom of chakra as the Kyuubi and Naruto's own chakra exploded from their cages. Two things began to happen to Naruto. The first was as if the world became so much more clear, even the smallest of water ripples being countable suddenly. The second was a rush of energy through his body that was emulated by the sudden growth of trees and roots on the walls of his mind, instantly covering the pipes in a layer of vegetation. The Choku Tomo, straight Tomo, Sharingan, the Kyuubi said, referring to the two Tomo crimson eyes Naruto was now sporting. The Shin Mokuton, true Mokuton, the Kyuubi said as he gestured to the trees on the walls. Amazing. Minato said in awe at the two powers that seemed to be working in perfect tandem. He glanced down at the small boy in front of him and smiled when he saw the wonder-filled eyes the boy still had somehow. I am so proud of you, my son, Minato said as he dropped to one knee so he was eye level with his son. You made your mother and me so happy, and I'm sorry we were take Nawahi from you before we could raise you and care for you and tell you everything we want to. Here's a birthday present, my son, he said as a tear ran down his cheek. Unlock it when you're alone and only use it when you need them. It was then Minato's time began to run out, his body slowly glowing with bright light as the chakra in him was used up. Before he left his son to face the world once more, he said one last thing. I love you. The Kyuubi grinned. Time to kick some ass? Naruto nodded. Absolutely. Naruto was about to leave when he said, I don't really have a lot of friends, Mr. Yoko. I hope you can be one of them. We'll see, Mr. Uzumaki. It was coming closer and closer, its knife-like teeth glistening with saliva. The ground below it caved in slightly due to the downward pressure it made when it jumped. Despite the finely sculpted muscles of the animal that had been supercharged by growing up in the chakra-laden forest, it did not have enough time to react to its fate. Naruto's eyes snapped open, each a blood-like crimson with two tomos, and it was like the world had slowed down. The tiger was slower than a snail as the rain that had started earlier completely stopped, each raindrop countable. Naruto's eyes looked at the creature attacking him with interest, also sensing the dozens of creatures that were watching this scene and hoping to steal the kill in case the tiger failed. The boy's hands came up before him, his hands clasping together as if he was going to pray and his eyes closed. And it was at that moment that the animals in the forest knew they fucked up. A mixture of blue, green, and orange chakra ripped from the small boy's body and the forest instantly reacted. The hate and power in the Baijuyo chakra was focused through the green Mokuton chakra before being directed with Naruto's own blue. It was then the forest of death exploded. Spikes and rocks and branches all erupted from the earth to spear and bludgeon and completely obliterate the dozens of beings watching Naruto. A single wooden spike flew from a tree on Naruto's left and flew through the tiger's head, stopping it in its tracks completely. Naruto's spinning red eyes allowed him to track the projectiles flying around as well as the predators turned prey attacking him, easily letting him dodge. It was only after about a minute that chakra stopped being pumped into the attack, the orange cloak returning to Naruto's body as his crimson eyes turned blue once more and he collapsed to the ground. Hokage-sama. The Umbu immediately said as he shunshined into the room. He's been found. Hiruzen's head shot up. Where? The Umbu bowed. Forest of Death. There was a huge spike of Baijuyo chakra and the boy has been located. There are Umbu teams there. The Hokage didn't even let him finish as he disappeared in his own, much faster Shunshin leaving on a flurry of leaves. He reappeared in the Forest of Death in front of what was now a much larger clearing. He glanced over at the Umbu who were there inspecting the scene and received a nod that told him that Naruto was okay. It was then he walked forward and knelt down next to the boy on the floor. Naruto looked so peaceful, so calm, while he was asleep. The forest around him was not. Trees stuck out from the earth at odd angles, the ground was broken and cracked and the leaves were all colored red from the blood of the creatures that had dared to attack him. It was a scene of absolute carnage and destruction. Something that had been done by a boy that was but only 5. Hiruzen could only begin to imagine the type of destruction Naruto could cause when he was a teenager or in his prime. Hiruzen sighed as he picked up Naruto and held him close. This changes everything. He was right, of course. There was a new name in the history books, one that would be remembered for ages. It was Naruto, child of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. It was Naruto, grandson of Hashirama Senju and Mito Uzumaki as well as the grandson of Madara Uchiha. A year had passed since the Kyuubi festival event and life had been very different for Naruto. Very few ever found out about what exactly happened in the Shinomori, Forest of Death, and the ones who knew were sworn to secrecy as it was now an S-ranked secret. Naruto had moved out of the orphanage less than a week after now that his chakra had been unlocked and given his own apartment with special Umbu guards that knew to leave him alone whenever he was training by order of the Hokage. It wasn't huge, with only one bedroom, a kitchen, a bathroom, and a small living room with a few bookshelves. The best part about it though was the fact that despite being an academy student, the Hokage had managed to reserve him a small training ground due to the sensitive nature of his powers. His abilities themselves had been very surprising in the least. So what exactly happened? Naruto stood in front of the Hokage like a shinobi would, but his eyes were much more angry than one's would normally be. Hiruzen even began to become a little uncomfortable from the mixture of the boy's ki and the Kyuubi's. Naruto's eyes cast down as his hands made fists. You're a liar. The Hokage's eyebrow shot up in surprise. What? Naruto growled. You knew who my parents were all along and you never told me. Hiruzen immediately lifted a fist. Umbu, dismissed. Naruto felt 4 presences in the room disappear instantly and he knew the room was secure. I don't know what you're talking about, the Hokage said, keeping the poker face that he had mastered over the last 3 shinobi world wars. That was no match however for the negative emotion sensing ability that the Kyuubi had. Liar/liar. Naruto growled as his anger began to increase gradually. I met the Kyuubi yesterday and when I tried to loosen the seal, I met my father. Hiruzen was appalled. Why did you try to touch the seal? The Kyuubi is dangerous. I trust him. He was controlled and forced to attack Konoha so it wasn't his fault, Naruto said, a smile on his face. The will of fire is to believe in your family and trust in your friends. He sighed and shook his head as if it was obvious. No one ever said they had to be human. The only sound the Kyuubi made was a quick hum. Naruto continued. I took off the seal entirely. The Kyuubi is still inside of me but he is no longer restrained. Hiruzen was terrified. But what if he gets free? A bonsai tree in the windowsill exploded as Naruto's hands clenched themselves into white-knuckled fists. I will handle him if that happens, but he is as much a part of me as my parents are to me. He is my family, brother in burden. He never asked for me to hold him nor did I ask to house him. Mokyutan. Hiruzen said with a straight face. Very well. I'm sorry I kept your family from you, the Hokage sighed. Do you have any questions? Yes, Naruto asked as his anger began to subside. Where are their belongings? Hiruzen nodded, he had expected that. At the Yondaime residence. No one besides immediate blood relatives and those keyed into the seal can enter. Naruto asked. Do I have any surviving relatives? I'm unsure. Your father was an orphan and your mother was the last of the Uzumaki royal clan, Hiruzen said. Naruto began to shake his head before pausing. Did he trust the Hokage? He thought about it for a second before nodding yes. He would not be there without the man, and the Hokage was one of the people he trusted most in the village. Naruto sighed as he slowly began to push chakra into his eyes. My father was not an orphan. Hiruzen's heart skipped a beat as he saw the crimson Tsutomu eyes that swirled with power that he had only seen in one man before. Impossible. He died. Naruto shook his head. He had a child before he died. A Minato Uchiha. The Hokage placed his hands in his face. He never told me. My grandfather made a lot of enemies. The child of the infamous Madara Uchiha and last member of the Uchiha main line. He would have been assassinated by IWA in a week, Naruto explained. The Hokage groaned with his face in his hands, thinking about how this changed everything. Naruto glanced at the picture of Minato that was on the Hokage's desk and remembered something important. Did Hashirama Senju and Mito Uzumaki have a child? Hiruzen looked up and nodded. Yes, the famous Tsunade Senju of the Sunin. Naruto raised his eyebrow in surprise, he had heard of the greatest medical ninja in the world. She's my aunt. Hiruzen's jaw wanted to separate from his body. What? Naruto nodded. My mother, Kushina Uzumaki, was the last child of Hashirama Senju and Mito Uzumaki. The professor just wanted to groan even harder. So you're... Naruto nodded. I'm the last of the Senju and the last of the mainline Uchiha clan. Hiruzen leaned back in his chair and sighed. This was all a lot to take in and would likely change the future of Konoha and the world. An heir to at least half a dozen of Konoha's greatest shinobi? Naruto's potential in the future was incredible. Hiruzen placed a hand on the Umbu seal burned into his desk and spoke into it. Tiger and Weasel, report to the Hokage's office as soon as possible. Power must be trained. Hiruzen looked at the young boy in front of him with amused eyes. And I have great teachers for you. It was later that day that Naruto met his two teachers. One was a kid, around 12 or 13, with a weasel mask. He had straight black hair as well as black eyes. He was slim but surprisingly strong and his kenjutsu skills were amazing. But the reason why Weasel was chosen was his incredible Sharingan proficiency. The boy had the ability to track dozens of shuriken thrown at him while casting a genjutsu he had just copied. It was simply amazing. His other teacher was a man in his early 20s with a tiger mask. He had short brown hair that was kind of spiky and dark brown eyes. Naruto wasn't sure what Tiger was supposed to teach him until one day Tiger displayed his Mokyutan. He explained it was the product of an Orochimaru experiment. It wasn't as powerful as Hashirama's natural Mokyutan or Naruto's Shin Mokyutan, but it was still enough to make the Umbu one of the strongest in the village. Naruto met the two ninjas twice a week and over the last year had evolved pretty far under their tutelage. The first thing they had done was chakra control exercises due to the fact that despite Naruto only recently unlocking his chakra, it was already almost Chunin level in capacity and had only increased as his training went on. They had begun with tree walking exercises before moving on to water walking. Tiger had great pleasure on dropping the young boy into the water to see if he could land on his feet and stand on Thuater. After this they had moved on to leaf balancing and rock balancing exercises, both more specialized exercises. This served two purposes, as it both improved the chakra control of a person to a level beyond was what necessary, and it also opened the path for one to become a medic nin. Weasel and Tiger had agreed that Naruto should begin studying Iraya ninjutsu due to the fact that Hashirama Senju, his grandfather, and Tsunade Senju, his aunt were both legendary medics and perhaps their skills had passed on to Naruto. It was after this training in chakra control that they had begun what Naruto really wanted to begin, ninjutsu training. They had begun with the 3 basic academy ninjutsu and Naruto was incredibly proficient in 2 of them, no longer needing signs for the kawarimi or the henge. Naruto could not perform the bunshin no matter how hard he tried. It was simply impossible for him to create something with so little chakra no matter how great his control was. Thus his Tutiakers thought it was necessary to show Naruto some variations of the jutsu. Weasel had shown Naruto the Kage Bunshin, a forbidden B-rank jutsu that created corporal clones of the user that lasted only 1 hit, however transferred the memories of the clone back to Naruto. Tiger had shown Naruto the Moku Bunshin or wood clone, a special Mokuton technique that made a clone of the user out of wood. The clone was different from other clones due to the fact that the wood clone did not dispel immediately upon being hit, which made them incredibly difficult to distinguish from the original. The wood clone also had the ability to merge with trees and plants to move through the ground and could communicate with the original, thus relaying information. It was these jutsus along with the Shunshin that Naruto had learned to supplement his arsenal. The Shunshin itself had been taught to him by Shisui, the fastest Shunshin user in Konoha. While Naruto was nowhere even close to that level of skill with the jutsu, Shisui had decided to pass on some of his secrets to the boy. Shisui had explained that a way to move without a substitute was to apply bursts of chakra to the area that you are stepping on. This lowers the tension and impact and allows you to move quicker. But the final and Naruto's personal favorite no doubt was elemental ninjutsu. So why did you hand me a piece of paper? Naruto stood in the middle of the grassy training ground they always met by while Tiger stood in front of him and Weasel leaned against a tree. Tiger rolled his eyes from behind his mask. We have been training together for 4 months, so it was time for us to move past the basic jutsu. This is chakra paper. It's made from a tree that was fed with chakra, which has caused it to become very reactive, Weasel explained as he handed Tiger a square of paper from his pouch. If it burns, you have a cat on affinity like Weasel. If it becomes soggy, you have a certain affinity like me. If it crinkles up into a ball, you have a Raiton affinity. If it is cut to pieces, you have a Futon affinity. If it crumbles to dust, then you have a Doton affinity, Tiger explained as he held the paper in his hand. There was a pause for a second when suddenly one half of the paper began to become soggy like it had been dipped in water while the other half slowly crumbled to dust. Naruto nodded in understanding. Here we go. Once more there was a pause as the paper glowed dark blue from Naruto's chakra. The first thing that happened was the paper became soggy to the point it was falling apart before the wet paper crumbled to pieces into dirt that instantly went up into white-hot flames that fell to the ground. Tiger's jaw dropped from behind his mask. What the dash? Heck, Weasel interrupted, censoring the man. Tiger began to immediately analyze the situation when he snapped from his shock. It seems you have a Doton and Suton affinity as well as a Katon affinity. Probably from Mokuton and your Uchiha heritage respectively. Naruto grinned. All I hear is that I'm awesome. Weasel raised an eyebrow from behind his mask. You think so? Very well, we'll begin with Katon training then. No, Weasel-sensei. Naruto screamed as he was grabbed by the back of the shirt and dragged away for some torture training. Poor boy, Tiger said. He gave a silent prayer for Naruto before he formed a wooden chair underneath himself so he would get a nice spot to watch the interesting Katon training to come. Naruto. Naruto's head snapped up at the loud yell and just narrowly dodged the chalkboard eraser thrown at him by his teacher, who was standing at the front of the room. The man was around average height with tan skin, brown eyes, and brown hair pulled into a ponytail. He was wearing the traditional Konoha Chunin outfit with the navy blue shirt, dark blue pants, and a green Chunin flak jacket. The thing, however, that made him stand out was the large horizontal scar across the bridge of his nose. Oh, my bad, Iruka-sensei. Naruto said as he scratched the back of his head sheepishly. Can you repeat the question, please? Iruka sighed. I was asking which Baijuya did Madara Uchiha use in his battle against Hashirama Senju. The Kyubi no Yoko, The strongest of the Baijuyu as well as the one who attacked the leaf a few years ago, Naruto explained. Iruka nodded his head at the correct answer before turning around back to the chalkboard and began to write some notes about Tobirama Senju's contributions to Konohan government. Naruto was about to go back to sleep when he heard someone in the row below him snicker. I'm sure he would know. Naruto recognized the boy. His name was Kenichi Sato and he was the civilian son of Takedo Sato, one of the civilian merchant families that were born with a son that was able to Kanal Chakra. The boy was short and kind of skinny with short brown hair and brown eyes, but he had a cocky smirk on his face despite being in the middle of the class. Naruto had decided to pretend to be near the bottom of the class to disguise his abilities, which was why Kenichi wasn't shitting his pants right now. Naruto clenched his fists in anger. Shut up. Kenichi asked with an arrogant smirk. Oh, are you going to make me? Naruto shook his head and sighed. If you understood the severity of your mistake, you would stand down. Kenichi was about to respond when Iruka turned to look at the clock. Let's please move outside to the training field for taijutsu practice. The training ground for the academy wasn't huge, about the same size as the one Naruto used with his teachers, but it had more training equipment there for the students. Standing with Iruka to help watch over the 20 or so academy students were two Chunin, both around 18. Iruka explained. Each of you will attempt to land a strike on one of our Chunin volunteers within the first 20 seconds as well as stay in the ring for at least 30 seconds. The Kyuubi scoffed from inside of Naruto's head. This is a joke. The academy in your grandfather's time was so much more advanced by now. Each student had to be proficient in the basic academy style as well as begun to develop individual techniques. Naruto nodded. It's probably because this academy has civilian recruits, so they have to slow it down. Naruto was zoned out when he saw Kenichi raise his hand. Iruka-sensei, may I request a spar between myself and Uzumaki-san? I wish to test my skills against someone in mid-peer range. Iruka hesitated before nodding. Very well. The class and the Chunins stepped back to clear room as Naruto and Kenichi stepped into the ring. It was about 5 meters across and marked using chalk so that it was identifiable and when someone was pushed out of the circle. Naruto casually brushed a little dirt off the jacket of his orange jumpsuit. He had decided to keep it for at least a little bit as it made people underestimate him as they thought he was an idiot for wearing it and would make detection so much easier. They were wrong on almost both accounts. Not only was Naruto most likely a few steps ahead of them with his creative mind that could come up with clever battle strategies on the fly, but his speed and training in stealth from 2 Umbu members made him incredibly difficult to detect regardless of what colors he was wearing. Naruto and Kenichi stepped forward on opposite sides of ring while Iruka stood between them. Kenichi stepped back with his right foot and brought his fists up in the traditional academy stance, a basic taijutsu style that did not specialize in offense or defense in particular as well as being simple enough to teach to 6-year-olds. Naruto on the other hand didn't even step into a stance and simply placed his hands in fists by his side as he stood up straight, staring his opponent down with bored blue eyes. Iruka looked slightly worried but brought his hand up. This is a spar between Naruto Uzumaki and Kenichi Sato. There will be no killing or maiming strikes. I shall call the victor when one is evident. Iruka waited for both participants to nod in understanding before he brought his hand down like he was waving a flag. Begin. Weasel parried away Naruto's right hook with the back of his hand before kicking out with the blade of his foot. The side kick caught Naruto in the stomach and due to his light weight and Weasel's strength, it easily sent Naruto flying back and into a roll. You came at me in a straight line, Weasel said as he settled back into a relaxed standing position. Even without my Sharingan, I can predict every move you're gonna make. Naruto growled from where he was crouched. This would have been so much easier with my Sharingan. Weasel rolled his eyes from behind his mask. Your Sharingan may be more powerful than mine, but you don't have 1/10 the skill that I have in using it. You're flexible but also strong and very fast. In general and especially for your age, Weasel commented. You're smart too, so use it to your advantage. Weasel stepped back with his right leg so his left was facing forward and raised an open hand toward Naruto while his other hand was pressed against his back. Now again. Naruto did not fall for his teacher's taunt but instead stood there. They both stood there for a second until Weasel's eyes suddenly widened in surprise and he whipped around to block a roundhouse kick to the side of his head. Naruto used the force to then twist his body, his hands touching the floor in a handstand-like maneuver. Then, like the crap of a whip, his left foot came around and struck Weasel across the face, right against the mask. Naruto did not know that the maneuver he had used was very similar to one his father used to use in battle when he found it too time-consuming to put his feet back on the ground after teleporting. Weasel clutched his mask to prevent it from flying from his face as his head whipped backwards from the force between the blow. He stumbled back a few steps blind from the jostling of his mask, which allowed Naruto to slide forward and land several strikes on the umbu before Weasel recovered. Naruto grinned as he jumped back. "How was that?" Weasel nodded. "Very nice, although I thought we had agreed no jutsu during this spar." Naruto shook his head. "I didn't use any jutsu during the spar. I made the cage bunshin while you were lecturing me and left it there to distract you." "Very nice. You'll be an excellent shinobi one day." Weasel smirked as his body dispersed into crows to reform behind Naruto. "But you two should recognize when you're fighting a cage bunshin." Naruto's eyes widened in shock before they almost glowed with excitement. "Let's dance. This will be such a boring dance." Naruto rolled his eyes as he watched Kenichi start running at him straight on with a fist pulled back. He didn't even need his Sharingan, as it was like the civilian boy was running in slow motion due to Naruto's adaptation to higher speeds. Naruto didn't even move his hands to block as he dodged at the last minute with a turn of his body. His left foot shot out and crashed into the boy civilian's stomach, instantly causing the boy to crumble to the ground in pain. Naruto had held back on the strength behind the blow to the point of a normal academy student, but it was still more than enough to knock the air out of Kenichi. With a final kick to the side of the head, Kenichi was out for the count. Iruka stepped into the ring as soon as he shook the confusion off of his face. "The winner is Naruto Uzumaki." Naruto grinned as he walked off of the field to where the rest of the class was standing. He ignored the glares of some of the fangirls who recognized that Naruto Baka could most likely take on their beloved Sasuke-kun with that level of skill. Naruto's eyes wandered over the people in the grade who had any potential at all. There was Shikamaru Nara, one of the smartest and laziest kids in the grade and likely the village, as well as the heir to the Nara clan. The Nara clan was known for their shadow techniques and their position in the Inoshikacho trio, as well as the members' high IQ that often lead them to obtain high-ranking strategic positions in the village. Shikamaru was known for his spiky black hair tied back into a ponytail, as well as the bored face he always had on his face. Shikamaru was usually sleeping through class but was currently staring down Naruto, his eyes squinted in thought as he attempted to piece together the puzzle that was the blonde boy. There was Kiba Inyazuka, the male heir of the Inyazuka clan, as well as the partner to Akamaru. The Inyazuka clan was known for their cooperation techniques with their ninkin to eto the practice of members of the clan receiving their ninkin at such a young age that the bond between them was almost inseparable. Kiba was wearing a gray hoodie with black fur around the hood, which complemented the feral look the two large red fang tattoos on his face gave him. Kiba grinned from his front seat, Akamaru on his head and barking happily. There was Shino Abarame, heir to the Abarame clan. The Abarame clan was one of the four noble clans and one known for their rather odd bug ninjutsu that involved young members being implanted with hives of bugs to be used in techniques. Shino looked like a mysterious shinobi with his long trench coat that covered his body and never betrayed any of his actions. Shino was silent in the back of the room, his sunglass-covered eyes watching the room. There was Koji Akimichi, the heir to the Akimichi clan. Known for their use of yang ninjutsu to modify their body to control their body that could make them grow to incredible size. Koji was husky and known for his spiky brown hair that stuck from both sides of his head, as well as the swirls on his cheeks that looked like Naruto Maki. Koji sat next to Shikamaru, happily crunching on a bag of barbecue chips. There was Ino Yamanaka, female heir to the Yamanaka clan. Known as the Mindwalkers, the Yamanaka were invaluable to interrogation squads for their abilities to enter the minds of other shinobi and look around. Ino was fair-skinned with long platinum hair with a long spiky bang that went across her hair. Ino was sitting next to her best friend/rival Sakura Harino and trying to talk to Sasuke Uchiha, the love of her life. Sakura Harino was the only child of the civilian family. The Harino, however, due to her high test grades and her ability to use chakra, she had been placed in the shinobi class with the clan heirs. Sakura was known for her bright emerald eyes, her large forehead and her pink hair that was odd even among shinobi. Sakura was trying to pushing Ino out off her seat to sit next to Sasuke. There was the Hyuga clan, Hinata Hyuga and Hanabi Hyuga. Hinata was much more quiet to the point of being silent all day with only occasional squeaks, while Hanabi was much more outspoken to the point she often got into fights with Naruto and Kiba, another member of the class. Nevertheless, both girls had shown their talent in the Hyuga arts, with Hanabi having one of the strongest Byakugan in the clan and Hinata's talent in the Jyoken fighting style. The two twin girls were almost identical except for the fact that Hanabi's hair was much longer, waist length and tied back in a loose ponytail. There was the Uchiha clan, Sasuke Uchiha and Oiki Uchiha. Twin heirs to the clan that had both inherited the prodigious skills that the Uchiha clan was known for. On the other hand, Sasuke had inherited the Uchiha pride as well to these skills, while Oiki was much more like their older brother, kind but ruthless. Both Uchihas had the signature onyx ice and black hair, although Sasuke's hair was in a weird duck butt haircut while Oiki had long straight black hair that went to her waist. These were the most talented people in the class, the only ones worth even thinking about in Naruto's opinion. Hinata blushed red as he walked by her chair. "Gee, good job, Naruto-kun." "Thank you, Hinata-chan." Naruto gave her a bright smile. "You look very nice today." Hanabi growled as she glared at the boy with white eyes. "Stay away from my sister, Naruto-san." Naruto's bright smile turned into a flirty grin. "Ah, Hanabi-chan, why would I ever stay away from such a beautiful girl?" Naruto was saved from Hanabi's flurry of Juken strikes by Sasuke's snort. "Stupid dobe." Naruto turned to the boy. "Want to fight next, Yuki-chan?" Sasuke and Naruto were rivals, even though the entire class thought Naruto was an idiot who got lucky at times. While he didn't let himself get pushed around by the clan heirs and the Chunins, Naruto also didn't show the full extent of his skills so that people would underestimate him. Sasuke was going to attack him when his sister grabbed his wrist and pulled him down, stopping him. "Why, thank you, Oiki-chan. I'm glad you know when to keep your brother from getting his ass beat," Naruto said with a grin. "Even though we both know he's into that." Oiki giggled into her hand while Sasuke looked like he was going to launch a fireball at Naruto there and then. "I am going to food dash. We both know half the class would pay to see that Yuki-chan," Naruto said as he quickly returned to his seat, leaving a trail of destruction in a fuming Sasuke. Naruto grinned. "It would be a fun few years. My stomach really hurts as I write this, so I'm gonna keep the end brief. I added in Oiki and Hanabi because I feel like I